On the 3rd of December 1979, English rock band The Who was scheduled to play a concert at the Riverfront Coliseum in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thousands of general admission ticket holders gathered outside the venue hours before the scheduled start of the concert, but were kept waiting outside by organisers while final arrangements were made for the night's performance. When the go-ahead was finally given to let the waiting crowd inside, only 2 doors were opened. 2 doors for more than 8,000 people. By the time The Who actually did take to the stage that evening, 11 of their fans would be dead. The Who were, at the time of the disaster, undertaking the US leg of a world tour. Tickets to see them were in incredibly high demand. 18,348 tickets were put on sale for the concert at the Riverfront Coliseum, and every single one of them was sold in under 2 hours. As with many concerts at the time, the majority of these tickets were sold on a festival seating basis. Another way of describing this might be first come, first served. Under the festival seating system, general admission ticket holders could pick their seats within an assigned area, and so those who entered the venue first would generally get a better view than those who came later. This system was not without its problems. When seating wasn't assigned, many people would sit in the aisles for a better view, sometimes completely blocking them. Minor crushes were also common, as fans would often gather outside venues hours before concerts began, and then rush the gates when they opened in a race for the best seats in the house. On the 3rd of December 1979, this is exactly what happened. Many ticket holders had been told by a local radio station that they would be granted admission from 3 p.m, and so arrived a few hours before that at 1 p.m. They gathered in the car park outside the Riverfront Coliseum, smoking, drinking, socialising, and waiting for the doors to open. But the doors did not open. As time passed, the crowd swelled. At around 3 p.m, police were called in to manage the growing number of people outside the venue. By most estimates, there were several thousand people present at this time, with more arriving every hour. The doors remained shut. As the hours wore on, the crowd concentrated around the closed doors, poised for the moment when they would finally be opened. By 7 p.m, 4 long, cold hours after many in the crowd had been told they would be granted admission, some fans were losing patience. Small crushes developed around several of the doors, with people pinned in place against the glass, unable to move as those behind them pushed blindly forwards. The venue, however, wasn't ready. Organisers didn't have enough staff available to act as ticket takers, and also wanted to allow the band time for one final sound check before the concert began. This sound check, according to some witness testimony, played a fateful role in what happened next. From outside the venue, it may have sounded as though the concert was beginning, something which caused patrons at the back of the crowd to start pushing. At roughly the same time, 2 doors on the right side of the main entrance were opened. The result was an intense crush around these doors. Staff from the Coliseum tried to hold the crowd back while they doggedly checked tickets. The crowd compacted, creating not a stampede but a slow, steady squeeze which lasted around half an hour. Reports of the crush note that people were pressed up against the glass doors, or picked up and carried by the sheer pressure of the crowd. Survivors report feeling that they were trampling on fallen concertgoers, but being so tightly pinned in place, they were unable to do anything but scream for those further back in the mass of people to stop pushing. One survivor recalls quite vividly being stuck, standing in a crowd so tight that everyone around him was straining upwards, mouths open, just trying to breathe. the heat of bodies created a visible vapour cloud over the densely packed throng of people. The police, watching from outside the venue, refused to help, in part perhaps because they believed the crowd to be composed largely of hysterical drug users. Several survivors report escaping the crush and running to the police to beg them to take action, only to be reprimanded and told to refrain from telling the police how to do their job. In any event, no help was forthcoming from the authorities. But what about the staff within the venue? It appears that they didn't realise the magnitude of the crush until after most of the concertgoers had been admitted. Although several people died within minutes of the crush beginning, their bodies were held in a standing position by the pressure of the crowd. Only once the crowd cleared did the dead and injured become evident. Also revealed was a raft of shoes, wallets, clothing and other personal effects that had been ripped from the bodies of those in the crush, along with thousands of bloody footprints. Indeed, some patrons would only later discover blood on their shoes. Management of the Riverside Coliseum assessed their options and decided to go ahead with the concert as planned, despite the carnage. Cancelling it, they feared, might result in another crush, as 18,000 angry patrons stormed out of the venue. While The Who took to the stage, the dead were removed from the scene, and the seriously injured transported to hospital. 11 people died as a result of the crush. They were 22-year-old Walter Adams Jr., 18-year-old Peter Bowes, 21-year-old Connie Sue Burns, 15-year-old Jacqueline Eckel, 19-year-old David Heck, 27-year-old Tava Ray Ladd, 15-year-old Karen Morrison, 19-year-old Stefan Preston, 20-year-old Philip Snyder, 17-year-old Brian Wagner, and 21-year-old James Warmoth. The Who were not told what had happened until after they finished playing. By all accounts, they were immensely distraught. They considered cancelling the rest of their tour, but realised that if they did so, they would never play again. Instead, they dedicated their next concert to the fans that had died, with the words, "We lost a lot of family last night. This show's for them." Interviews show that even decades later, members of the band are still haunted by the disaster. The response to the tragedy from the wider world was, at times, unsympathetic. Some commentators blamed the victims. The crowd, they alleged, had been drunk and violent, and had behaved like animals. The crush was initially reported as a stampede of drug-crazed youths, a description which many who had been involved in the incident hotly disputed. As the disaster was investigated, it became clear that the use of festival seating had played a key role in events, and, moreover, that there had been many warning signs of an impending tragedy. There had, for example, been minor crushes at several previous concerts. The venue had been repeatedly criticised for fire safety violations, for overselling events, and for refusing to cooperate with the police in emergency situations. Many of these accusations were disputed by Coliseum management, who insisted that, since the area immediately outside their doors was city property, they really weren't responsible for what happened there. Further to this, many people, including fire chiefs and city councillors, had criticised festival seating specifically, noting that the problem was getting worse over time as concertgoers turned up at the venue earlier and earlier. Again, Coliseum management waved away concerns, claiming that concertgoers liked festival seating, and that as such, it should remain. As a result of the Who concert crush, some action was finally taken. Cincinnati, along with several other cities, banned festival seating, and now limits the number of tickets that may be sold for an event to guarantee a certain amount of space per person inside a venue. News of the disaster helped to propagate these measures, and unassigned seating at rock concerts is now almost never permitted. The Riverfront Coliseum has greatly improved its safety record and rebranded. It is now known as the Heritage Bank Center. More than 35 years after the disaster, a memorial marker was installed on site, bearing the names of those who died. The text on the marker gives a brief summary of events that transpired on the 3rd of December, 1979. 11 concertgoers, trapped in a crush of people, died at the Southwest Plaza entrance to the Riverfront Coliseum, waiting to see The Who. Many others were injured in what was the deadliest concert tragedy in United States history. The tragedy spurred passage of a crowd safety ordinance, which became a model for the world.